You're listening to Counsel, a podcast I launched in 2018. On this show, we explore how lawyers can build satisfying and successful professional lives. There have been enormous changes in the practice of law in the decades since I became a member of the bar. On this show, I bring you conversations with attorneys who have charted interesting career paths as the profession has evolved. I'll speak with consultants who are helping the legal community navigate these changes. We dive into strategies, mindsets, and ideas that can help you grow your practice and grow in and out of our profession. And now, here's today's episode. Welcome back, everybody. Just a reminder that if you are listening to Counsel on one of the audio platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you could also find us now on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, it's nice to have you here. As lawyers, we are trained to be responsive, analytical, and relentlessly committed to solving problems. Those qualities serve our clients well, but they can also make it difficult to set healthy boundaries with clients, partners, and with work in general. This can have a very negative impact on our mental health. So, what can we do about that? Here to discuss this is Gary Miles. Gary is a veteran trial lawyer, managing partner, author, and success coach. He has more than 4 decades of experience in the legal profession. Gary is author of the book Breaking Free, a guide for lawyers wanting to leave the law, and he hosts the Free Lawyer podcast, where he explores how lawyers can build more fulfilling and sustainable careers. He writes a lot about these and other topics, and I highly recommend that you follow him on LinkedIn. I've also had the honor of being a guest on Gary's podcast, so it's a real pleasure to have him join me today to talk about boundaries, burnout, and what it means for lawyers to redefine success. Thanks so much for joining me today, Gary.
Steve, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. You know, I think the world of you and the service you give to lawyers around the country.
Well, it's a mutual appreciation society. Gary, you've had what many lawyers would consider an incredibly successful career. You had numerous trial victories, you've been in leadership roles and decades in practice, yet you've spoken about feeling dissatisfied. What was going on beneath the surface?
Well, I guess it was a combination of things. I did litigation. I was very focused too often on the outcome and lived in fear of that next loss that would jeopardize my practice, jeopardize my reputation. I was very conscious of how I was perceived by others in the legal community and by clients. And I also struggled with perfectionism. It, in many ways, drove me to be very, very successful academically and then successful in my career. But it was based on fear of judgment, fear of failure, a whole myriad of fears. And those combined, and they're all self-created. I'm responsible. No one did them to me. And I think they create a lot of stress and anxiety for me.
At what point did you begin to realize that the traits that made you successful as a lawyer were also contributing to burnout?
You know, I don't know if it was a process more than an event, continued experiences. Most of my work was on the defense side, defending trucks and truck drivers, but I had the privilege of being able to handle other cases that I wanted to, and I did a little bit of plaintiff's employment law. I handled this case for a wonderful client who worked for a large company in Maryland and was fired, and we claimed it was age discrimination. I thought it was a very, very good case. The other side filed a copious motion for summary judgment. I drafted what I thought was an excellent opposition brief. Clearly, there were questions of intent, but yet the judge granted summary judgment. And I remember being absolutely crushed and devastated. And I hated letting my client down. And it haunted me for years, feeling like I failed her. Then I was in a mediation a couple years later with a magistrate judge I knew quite well. And I told him that story. And he said, that judge has granted summary judgment to every employer in every employment case it's ever been assigned to him. And then it dawned on me that while I was beating myself up for somehow being a failure and inadequate, the reality was it kind of didn't matter what I did in light of that fact. And that made me realize that my focus on outcome which in this case, the outcome was a failure, instead of when my preparation, my effort, my diligence was really completely misplaced. And that helped me to realize I needed to be in a different place mentally in how I evaluated who I was and how I was doing.
I know that high performing athletes think this way. They think about what's happening in the moment. They're not thinking about the end result. They're not thinking about what happened in the past. They're just very present. Do you think there's an analogy there?
Oh, absolutely, completely. And I've used that analogy myself. One of my best friends at my club in Maryland was quite a good tennis player, won a number of tennis championships. And I asked him, Jeff, I said, what makes you so good, so successful? He says, I don't care if I win or lose. I'm just enjoying playing tennis. And I played competitive golf as a young person in high school and college. And I think that was a big problem for me because I was so focused on the importance of every shot. If I miss this putt, Steve will go one up on me. I better make it. Just creates unnecessary stress and anxiety instead of thinking, I've hit this putt 30 times on the practice green. This is an easy putt. Just let it roll. Very different mindset. I think the analogy is perfect for lawyers.
I just had this insight. I play squash, and at least in golf, once you've hit a stroke, it's okay if you focus on where the ball is going. In squash, you have to start to think about getting back in position. And my problem in squash is that I'll hit something, I'll hit a shot, and if I think it's a good shot, I'm just standing there admiring it. It's not a
Yeah.
good way to play squash.
Only if you're ending the point. Only if the shot's so good your opponent can't get it.
Exactly, exactly. Let's talk about boundary setting. What do you mean by setting boundaries?
What I mean is developing a style of practicing law where we recognize our own personal needs and set some limitations on our availability that honors them. It could be as simple as not looking at my cell phone while I'm having dinner with my family, or not looking at emails on my laptop or phone after 7 p.m. at night. Or what I think is really important, I was a guest on another podcast one time, and there was a therapist on there, and she said, we train our clients to expect that we're always available because every time they call, we answer the phone. Every time they email us, we email them right back. And they begin to expect constant availability. You would be worried about your physician if you called him at 10 in the morning and he answered the phone. That would make you concerned. And out of respect for him, you don't expect him to answer the phone. You expect him to call you back later that day. And I think lawyers can set similar boundaries in their practice. One of the troubles we have as lawyers is we work so hard all day, feel like we're on a hamster wheel. At the end of the day, we don't have many hours billed and we don't know what in the world we got done. And instead, I really encourage my clients to set times when they are unavailable for phone calls or emails, where they can just focus on their work and get it done. And I think that's a very healthy boundary to have.
Lawyers that work at large law firms, particularly when they're more junior, I think they have a lot of trouble with this. And I think part of it is they are working in an environment where they are expected to have very limited boundaries. So, is there anything you would say about the associate who's being responsive at 10 o'clock at night to the partner who sends them an email?
Yeah, I've actually spoken on this topic at two conferences, and I would have a discussion with that partner, at least in terms of the daytime boundaries, and explain I'll get more work done for you in less time and better if I have a couple hours in the day where I'm not interrupted, because the interruptions, I have a hard time getting back on task. And I find that if they can convince the partner to give that a try, then it actually works. The partner will be pleased with the fact that the associate's getting their work done better. In terms of the evening texts, I think that's a very unhealthy practice, and there may be limitations in how much you could change. But I actually wrote a blog and did a podcast about this topic recently where, the managing partner who does that is setting a very bad example. I call it the invisible curriculum. The The visible curriculum is you have a mentor, we train you how to practice area law, we have CLEs. The invisible curriculum is I send you a text at 10 p.m. at night, and I expect you to answer it right away. And I would probably have a discussion. When you send me those texts at 10 p.m., do you expect an immediate response? Is that what you're looking for? Or is it something that can wait in the morning? And if it can wait in the morning, maybe you can wait to send it to me in the morning. But if it can wait until the morning, I won't intend to respond to it unless you somehow flag it to me as being urgent. Because so often they're sent just out of bad habit or without an intention of there being immediate response. But yet the associate feels like, better answer this, the boss sent it. And that's really can lead to burnout when someone can feel like they're ready to go to bed at 10 p.m. and they get a text they have to answer.
Okay, picking up on that, why is boundary setting particularly difficult for lawyers?
Well, and this is actually a great example because we feel we have to please all of those around us. Certainly our managing partner is important and we feel an obligation to please him. But even those people we have control over, like our clients, we view our constant availability and our unbridled dedication to our clients as being what got us to where we are, what made us so successful. And I know people have told me, I'm afraid if I don't take that call, they'll leave and find another lawyer. And I would say that's actually not the case. Because if you're my client, Steve, and I explain to you that, between the hours of 8 and 10, I don't take calls. I'm working on clients' files in a very focused manner. And I don't mind you calling me between those hours, but no, unless it's absolutely an emergency, I won't be able to take your call. But I assure you that when I finish my work at 10, I'll call you right back because I want to get your work done faster and better. And I find that having focused time to work on your file helps me to do that. And when that's explained to clients, they say, that sounds great. Thanks for letting me know. But if instead I say that and then the call comes in at 9:30 and I answer it and I get distracted from my task, I've just blown the whole boundary that I so intentionally set because I'm afraid of really setting that boundary, abiding by it, because it might undermine what I think is my success as a lawyer, as being constantly available, constantly on task, always there for the clients. And that's really, I think, not accurate.
I love the way you frame that in two parts. One is taking charge and being proactive in communication, both with partners and with clients. And I also love the way you frame it as the benefit to the client and the benefit to the partner.
I think it is a mutual benefit. And I think, we obviously can't control our managing partners, but I know of lawyers who tried this with their bosses. They just give me this opportunity and we'll see how it works. And some of it is kind of reorienting the managing partner to honoring that boundary, either by not sending messages or knowing that if they come through, they won't be immediately answered. And generally they find they like when their associates get more work done better, more efficiently, and grow to think that's a good way to do business.
Do you think lawyers have more of a sense of urgency than a lot of their clients do?
I don't know how to compare one with the other. I think both are problems. I think lawyers have too great of a sense of urgency. My former partner every day would say, I have a crisis. And they really were never crises. They might have been initial stressors, but they weren't ever true emergency. Once in a while, there might have been but very seldom were they true emergencies. That was a misnomer. But I also think because we have become so immediately responsive, clients have grown to expect that if they call us and we don't answer for an hour and a half, they'll text us, I haven't heard from you. And I think we've created that environment.
You talk about the difference between operating from external authority versus internal authority. Can you explain what you mean by those concepts and how they show up in a lawyer's daily practice?
Sure. External authority is my getting my sense of self-worth and my confidence from external circumstances. I get a jury verdict. The judge ruled my way. My client sent me a nice email. My partner said, job well done. Those are nice things. But there are days that we lose a jury trial. The judge rules against us. A client, even without good reason, gets angry at us and frustrated because we didn't do something well enough or fast enough. Or our partner, despite the many great works we did, hyper focuses on something that wasn't so good. And all of a sudden, our confidence is shattered. In other words, we don't have control over those external circumstances. I didn't have control over losing that motion for summary judgment I discussed earlier. I only had control over the quality of the work that I did. And when we rest on external authority, every stressful event, a trial, a hearing, a client meeting with a difficult client, meeting with our managing partner, is a test of our worth. If it goes poorly, all of a sudden we think, I must not be that good because the client was displeased. So when we change the focus to internal authority, we're judging ourselves by our effort, our dedication, our focus, our service to our client. And sometimes we do all those things and things don't necessarily work out right. But no longer is the trial I'm about to head into a test of my worth. It's a test of the legal issues. My worth is determined by the work I've already done. And it's much more freeing. It comes back to what we said before about sports. If you hit a bad shot in squash, that doesn't in itself make you a bad squash player because you hit a lot of good shots. But in law, we think if we have that one thing that doesn't work out well, we're losers. And that causes so much stress and so much anxiety in really every realm of the law.
How might that relate to marketing, business development?
I think it completely connects with that because if we're doing business development and I walk into my meeting with you thinking, I have to really impress Steve. I really need his business. I need to say all the right things. And then when you say, oh, thank you, I'm very happy with my current lawyer, I feel like I'm a loser. But if instead I think, I'm just going to focus on listening to Steve, being comfortable, having fun, enjoying meeting another person and getting to know him well. If I get his business, fine. And if I don't, then maybe someday later I will, or I'll get other business. And it's a much more relaxed, much more connected way to do business development.
You've also written about the difference between perfectionism and professionalism. Why do lawyers so often confuse the two?
Well, because they're based on similar characteristics, effort, dedication, hard work, but they come from entirely different places. Perfectionism comes from a place of fear. We're afraid of making a mistake, afraid of losing, afraid of being judged. Professionalism comes from a place of confidence and service. I want to do a great job for my client. I want to focus. I want to work hard. And again, like internal authority, it's an analogous concept. They're related to each other. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but it won't be due to my lack of effort. So perfectionism is based on fear. Professionalism is based on confidence.
Okay, this next question, I really love what you've had to say about this. You've talked about how time management, using productivity tools, or taking longer vacations aren't necessarily the solution. Can you say why focusing on those things fails sometimes?
Well, focusing on those things is not a bad thing, but the reason it often fails is we haven't changed the problem. The problem isn't that we don't know how to be productive or don't know how to take a vacation. The problem is what we talked about at length earlier. External authority drives us to interrupt our purposeful productivity tool because you called me on the phone. Now I got to drop work on that motion because I want to take your call. I don't want to miss that call. In other words, we haven't changed our identity. We haven't changed from judging what we do based on those external circumstances to setting boundaries because we're confident in who we are and how we practice. I can't take a vacation and relax because I have to look at my email and see if any client needs me because I want to be indispensable. So it comes back to really we haven't changed the problem. The problem is how we see ourselves. Instead of seeing ourselves as valuable to our clients, we see ourselves as being indispensable. If they need us, we don't answer. Are we a bad lawyer? The answer is no, we're not, because we've let our clients know we're on vacation and we'll be off the grid for a week. And that's perfectly fine.
I've heard you use the phrase sustainable excellence. What do you mean by that?
Related to all the things we've talked about, we don't set boundaries and we don't delegate well because we want to make sure everything is just perfect. We want to make sure we're always responsive. We want to make sure that our junior associate or our paralegal do things as well and perfectly as we would have them done. Oh, heck, I'm not going to let Steve do it. I'll do it myself because I could do it faster and better than the time it takes to train Steve to do it. And what happens then? I don't ever delegate because I don't trust you and I haven't trained you and mentored you to be as good as I am. And our goal should be not that we're indispensable and the clients want only us, but that we build a team who provides the level of service and quality that I provide. I could build a team that could be as good to the clients as I am. And then I can take a vacation and know that all my matters are in good hands. I can be in trial for 3 days and not worry about what might be going wrong at the office. I did a poll on LinkedIn and kind of asked that question. When you're away for 2 weeks, and if you didn't check in, what would happen? And the answer should be things run just as smoothly as when I'm there. That was not the all the majority answers were things fall apart or things are in chaos or some answer like that. And that's not sustainable. In the beginning, we can, through our hard effort, our perfectionism, our dedication, we can build a practice, build a reputation. But then we get to the point where we're 40 or 45 and our kids are growing and we're not present for them because we haven't had boundaries and delegation and a team that support that service. So to me, that's what I mean by sustainable excellence. Unsustainable excellence is when I'm indispensable and I have to be totally responsible for everything myself.
I've met a few lawyers like that, including some of my clients.
There are many.
Your personal story includes a profound transformation, including getting sober in 1991. How did that experience shape the work you do now with lawyers?
Let me see. My transformation was about much more than no longer drinking. It changed me in so many ways in how I interacted with people and how I saw myself. And the transformation was more than from black to white. It really was very, very dramatic. And it let me know that whoever you are and whatever you're struggling with, whether it's setting boundaries or worrying too much about clients or stress, there are solutions. And there are people like you and me who are willing to help. I think every lawyer who is in a place where they feel so overwhelmed and stuck and powerless to change their circumstances should know that that can be transformed as well.
Let me just add that every state in the country has a lawyer's assistance program, which is a great place to start if you're thinking about these issues and you want free and confidential support. In Massachusetts, we have Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers. And Gary, what is the organization called where you were very involved?
I practiced in Maryland and was very active with their lawyer assistance program. And that's the same name in North Carolina, where I'm also supportive of their efforts, the Lawyers Assistance Program. That's the name in many states.
Can you say a little something about your book, Breaking Free? What led you to write it? It's a great book, by the way. Everybody should get it. And what are the 4 pillars that you encourage lawyers to think about when they are evaluating their careers?
So there's sort of 2 different questions there. Breaking free is about how we can find personal and professional freedom as a lawyer. And I talk about the 12 prisons of the mind, some of which we've talked about today: people pleasing, perfectionism, comparison, expectations. I struggle a lot with expectations. I expected to win the trial, always. And when I won, I was like, okay, well, that's what I expected. I didn't celebrate it. When I lost, I was crushed. And then I talk about the 12 keys to unlock those 12 prisons. Things like acceptance and gratitude and mentoring and mindfulness. Now I focus my work with lawyers on three pillars. The one which we've talked about so far, has to do with internal authority versus external authority. The other has to do with building a sustainable practice. And the other is having an authentic practice, doing what we enjoy, doing the kind of work we enjoy doing, working for the kinds of clients and the kinds of matters that fulfills us and energize us instead of frustrating. There's some lawyers who are full of internal authority and have sustainable practices, but they hate what they're doing. And that doesn't work either. They may hate their firm. They may hate the kind of practice. Whatever it is, they may be very displeased with their practice. So those are the 3 pillars, I think, all of which are essential and kind of in that order, essential to building a practice that is freeing, that we really enjoy, that on Sunday night, we're like, I'm looking forward to going to work tomorrow instead of dreading it like so many lawyers feel.
You've worked with many senior lawyers whose identities are deeply tied to their practices. Why does that make succession planning and career transition so difficult for senior lawyers?
Well, they see themselves so much as being a lawyer that they have a hard time seeing who they are if they are no longer an active lawyer. And there really, I guess, there are two major reasons why. The first is they may not have built a sustainable practice because they see themselves as being indispensable. And if I am no longer in the practice, does the practice continue? And it makes it very, very hard to transition out of a practice if when you walk out the door, everything falls apart. And that's the importance of building a team who is trained to your standards, who has learned everything you've learned, who's built your team has built great relationships with your clients versus someone who still does it all on their own, with some people doing some services for them. Because when that person leaves, they're done. And the other is without living a life where we've built other interests, hobbies, family, and we've worked 70-hour weeks our whole life. And now we're getting to age where it's time to stop working. What's our life? Who are we if we're not the indispensable lawyer that everybody honors and proclaims? So those are the two big challenges.
Gary, we're getting near the end here, and I just have two more questions. Basically, what pieces of advice would you give first to lawyers who are feeling increasingly stuck, lawyers who are feeling trapped by their own success?
I would encourage them first to take some time to self-reflect. They're so busy, but find an hour on a Saturday morning or go for a walk and think about what is it about my life as a lawyer that makes me feel trapped or stuck? What is it that causes me stress? What is it that I don't like that causes me anxiety? What is it that I enjoy? And then try to see what changes you can make, if any, to your legal practice to do more of those things you enjoy and less of those things you don't. And the second is to work with an outside mentor, someone like you who's familiar with the legal profession, knows how it works, and can be a good sounding board, a good support system, and give some wise guidance so that that lawyer can find a better way to practice law.
Okay, and finally, if a lawyer listening today realizes that he or she needs to start setting better boundaries, what is one practical step that she can take this week?
Set one boundary and only one boundary. Don't set them all, but just pick one that would cause a little bit of a change without being end of the world. And it could be something like putting your cell phone away for the hour around dinner time, or not looking at your email after 8 p.m., or one day a month, one Saturday where you completely disconnect from work. Just set one boundary and then stick to it for a month and absolutely stick to it. And if you can't, just keep trying a little bit harder, but start with one boundary to see that you can do it and to see that the world doesn't change when you keep that boundary in place.
I love it. Great advice. Start small. Okay, final question that I ask all my guests. What is one podcast, streaming television series, or book that you'd recommend? And this is purely for enjoyment.
Well, I'm going to recommend two, and I know you gave me one, but I'm going to expand it to two because there are two that I love and I have a hard time picking between them. The first is called Everyday Legacy by Cody, Codi Shewan, Shewan. And I did enjoy reading it very much, but not just for enjoyment, because it helped me see that our legacy we want to leave our heirs isn't just how much money we leave them in our state, but it's the memories we can create one day at a time and create a legacy of how we want to be remembered by those who love us. The second is called 7 Days in Utopia, Golf's Sacred Journey, which on its surface is an enjoyable book about golf, but it really applies to many of us in our life and specifically lawyers because it helps us focus on the lies we tell ourselves, some of which we talked about today in different contexts, that really hamper us from being as free as we should be in our practice.
So not only can Gary talk to you about setting boundaries, about building a successful practice, he could also speak to you about golf.
That's right. Absolutely.
Gary, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed getting to know you. We see each other now fairly regularly at provisors meetings, which is great. I really appreciate you joining me. If anyone in our audience has follow-up questions or they want to buy your book, how can they reach you?
They can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm very prominent there, Gary Miles. My website is garymiles.net. There are links to my book, to my podcasts there. And you can always email me at gary@garymiles.net. And Steve, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on. I admire who you are, but also the work you do for lawyers.
Again, Mutual Appreciation Society. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please tell others and rate us on iTunes or your favorite podcast app and share it with someone who you think might be interested. If you'd like to continue the conversation, I welcome your inquiries and invite you to set up a time to speak with me about your own career or marketing concerns. I've been coaching lawyers for almost 30 years, and I'm happy to do a free 30-minute consultation. You could sign up on my website at seckler.com. That's seckler.com. On my website, you could also find links to more episodes of Counsel to Counsel and get access to many free career marketing and leadership resources. In the meantime, thanks for listening.